The taxi pulled up in front of a grand mansion that seemed to stretch into the gray sky of the rainy afternoon. Jasmine Johnson nervously adjusted the collar of her dress, the only formal one she owned, a gift from Grandma Elena for her graduation from nursing school, just 3 months before she passed away. The memory of her grandmother blurred her vision. It had only been a week since the funeral, but the pain was still fresh, like the flowers that remained vibrant on her grave. At just 19, Jasmine was completely alone now, with barely enough money to cover 1 month's rent. $28, miss. The driver's voice snapped her back to reality. She paid with small bills, each carefully counted the night before. She couldn't afford to waste a single cent. The job ad had sounded almost too good to be true. Seeking personal assistant, no experience required. Attractive salary. Bain soaked her worn shoes as she approached the door. A stern-looking butler greeted her with an assessing gaze that made her all the more aware of her fraying dress and simply tied hair. "Miss Jasmine Johnson, I presume?" His tone was polite but distant. "Mr. Christopher Robin is expecting you in his study." Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she followed him down a lavish hallway, the walls adorned with paintings that likely cost more than her entire life. With every step, she felt like a misplaced note in a perfectly composed symphony. The study was a grand space, lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and wide glass windows overlooking the city skyline. But it wasn't the luxury that caught Jasmine's attention. It was the man standing by the window. Christopher Robin slowly turned as she entered. At 45, he carried a presence so intense the air around him seemed to thicken. His perfectly tailored gray suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, like he was bearing something invisible, yet immense. "Please, have a seat," he said, his voice low and edged with something Jasmine couldn't quite name. She sat at the edge of the leather chair, fingers laced to hide the trembling. His storm gray eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "Your file is..." "Interesting," he said, holding a single sheet of paper. "Fresh graduate from Santa Maria Nursing Institute, no work experience, orphaned." He paused. "Why are you here, Miss Johnson?" The question caught her off guard. She had expected him to ask about skills, not this. "I need a job, Mr. Robin," she replied honestly. "My grandmother..." Her voice broke. "She passed away last week. She was everything to me." Something shifted in his expression. For a moment, he seemed closer, almost human. "I'm sorry," he said softly, then quickly regained composure. "But you still haven't answered my question. Why here?" Jasmine took a deep breath. "Because the ad said, no experience required. Because it's the only open door among hundreds slammed shut. And because something told me this is where I need to be." A faint smile touched Christopher's lips. He stepped closer, his movements precise, controlled. "Do you know what I'm really looking for, Miss Johnson?" She shook her head, suddenly aware of a quiet electric current passing between them. "I'm not looking for a professional," he said, his voice gentler but more weighted. "I'm looking for someone who can make me believe in love, even if just for one night." His words dropped like stones into still water, stirring waves deep inside Jasmine. I don't understand," she stammered. "It's simple." He perched on the edge of the desk, close enough for her to smell his expensive cologne. "I'm offering you a contract. You will live here, attend events as my companion, and act as my assistant in name. In return, you'll receive a generous salary, a new wardrobe, education if you want it, and the chance to change my life." Jasmine shot to her feet, her legs trembling. You're asking me to..." "I'm asking you to save me," Christopher cut in, his voice cracking with something raw. "I'm not looking for a fling, Miss Johnson. I'm looking for sincerity, innocence, something real in a world full of lies." The rain beat harder against the glass, as if the sky itself sensed the tension in the room. Jasmine felt her world tilting, shattering everything she had once believed. "Maybe," she whispered. Christopher stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "Because when you walked through that door, I saw something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Your eyes held the same light my soul once had, before life turned it to stone." Jasmine took a step back, her mind spinning with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The image of Grandma Elena surfaced in her thoughts, along with her final words still echoing. "Life will throw you unexpected turns, my girl. The secret is knowing which paths lead to destiny and which are dead ends." "I'm not the person you're looking for," she finally said, her voice steadier than her heart felt. I'm still a naive girl, like you said. I've never been in love, and I'm not something that can be bought." What she didn't expect was for Christopher to smile. A real smile that transformed his face completely. "That's exactly why it has to be you." He turned toward the window. "I don't want to buy your innocence, Miss Johnson. I want you to give it to me. I want you to show me the world through your eyes. I want you to prove to me that purity still exists in a world soaked in cynicism." A flash of lightning lit up his lonely face as he turned back to her. "Take a day to think it over. The contract is on the desk, along with my card. If you decide to accept, call me. If not," he waved his hand lightly, "let's pretend this meeting never happened." Jasmine picked up the papers with trembling hands. The contract was thick and smooth, luxurious, like everything else in this mansion. But what caught her attention was the simple, elegant business card. Just his name and a phone number. "When you call, no, there's no turning back," he said slowly as she neared the door. "I'm not playing games. I'm searching for a revolution in my life." On the ride back, sitting in the taxi, Jasmine stared at the folder on her lap. The contract promised security, stability, everything she desperately needed. But the price was something she wasn't sure she could give. "He offered me the world," she thought, "in exchange for the only thing I still own, myself." The first week at the Robin estate passed like a dream. Her tiny apartment and the constant worry about rent was now a thing of the past. In its place was a bedroom larger than any place she had ever lived. Her wardrobe, once made up of 3 worn dresses, was now filled with elegant outfits that appeared mysteriously each morning. But it wasn't the luxury that kept her awake at night, staring at the ornate ceiling. It was him, Christopher Robin, the rugged shadow in a gilded mansion, always present but never truly belonging. Every morning, Jasmine would find him in the formal dining room, hidden behind the financial section of the paper. Breakfast was served at exactly 7:30. A symphony of elaborate dishes she barely touched, too distracted by the man seated across from her. "Good morning." His voice would come from behind the paper, low and composed as always. "Good morning, Mr. Robin," she would reply, taking her now familiar seat. He would fold the newspaper down, revealing his sharp, unreadable expression. But his eyes seemed to cut through every layer of calm she tried to maintain. "Did you sleep well?" he'd ask, though they both knew the dark circles beneath her eyes answered otherwise. "Yes, thank you," she lied, focusing on pouring coffee. The silence stretched, thick but not uncomfortable. Strange, she thought. How could they share so many silences and yet not feel smothered? Perhaps because inside each silence lived 1,000 unspoken words, questions neither dared to ask. "There's a board meeting today," Christopher finally broke the stillness. "I need you to take notes and observe. Don't speak unless I prompt you." Jasmine nodded, relieved to have something to focus on. In recent days, she'd come to see Christopher as a strict but patient teacher. He taught her the intricacies of business with a dedication that surprised her. It clashed entirely with his cold, distant exterior. The meeting took place on the 40th floor of a towering glass skyscraper. Jasmine watched him transform in the boardroom. His already commanding presence became almost otherworldly. He led the meeting like a conductor with a baton, every word, every gesture delivered with precision. But it was during lunch, afterward, that Jasmine first saw a crack in his perfect armor. "My wife passed away 5 years ago," one of the directors shared in passing. "I understand your loneliness, Christopher. Maybe you should consider—" "I don't need your advice on my personal life, Richard." The interruption was soft but final. Still, Jasmine noticed his hand gripping the wine glass, knuckles turning white. On the limousine ride home, the silence between them was different. Heavier, deeper. Jasmine found the courage to look directly at him. Christopher stared out the window, his face carved in the fading light. For a moment, he looked like the loneliest man she had ever seen. "Sometimes," she whispered, without thinking, "silence hurts more than words." He turned to her, surprised. "And what do you know about pain, Jasmine?" His tone wasn't mocking, he truly wanted to know. "I know pain comes in many forms," she replied, thinking of her grandmother. "And maybe the deepest kind is the one we never say out loud." His face changed, like a mask slipping. "You're dangerous," he murmured. "You see too much." That evening, instead of retreating to his study as usual, Christopher invited Jasmine up to the rooftop. The night breeze was cool, brushing past meticulously trimmed flower pots. The sky glittered with stars, and beyond the railing, the city skyline stretched, silent, dreamy, glowing like a secret whispered in the dark. Jasmine stood by the edge, her fingers grazing the cold stone, saying nothing, just being there. "My wife died 10 years ago," Christopher said, his voice even, low like the wind. "No accident, no dramatic tragedy. She just faded, as if life decided to leave her one day." Jasmine remained silent. She understood that this moment was fragile. A single misplaced word could shatter it. "Since then," he continued, eyes fixed on something far beyond, "I've built empires, multiplied fortunes, conquered markets, but I haven't truly felt anything real." He turned to look at her, and for the first time, his expression was unguarded, vulnerable. "That's why I asked you here, Jasmine, because when you walked into my study that day, I felt something. Maybe it was hope, maybe just curiosity, but it was real." In the week leading up to the annual Robin Foundation Gala, the mansion buzzed with attention Jasmine couldn't quite explain. The staff whispered in hallways, rooms were polished to perfection, and boxes of white flowers arrived daily. But for Jasmine, it wasn't the event that stole her sleep. It was the way Christopher looked at her and said nothing. That afternoon, laid across her bed was a black silk dress, elegant in its simplicity. A note lay beside it, "Tonight, 8 p.m. See." When Jasmine stepped out of her room wearing the dress, she didn't expect to find him standing there. Christopher froze. For a second, all control vanished from his eyes. "I need help with this," she said softly, lifting the delicate pearl necklace. He stepped closer, fingers brushing her nape as he fastened the clasp. Her breath caught when he whispered, "Perfect." The gala was held at the city's most luxurious hotel. As they entered, Christopher placed a gentle hand on her lower back, a small gesture, yet fiercely protective. All eyes turned to them. Jasmine felt the stares, the murmurs behind champagne glasses. A middle-aged man approached, smiling with eyes that held no warmth. "Christopher, it's been a while, and this lovely lady is..." "Jasmine Johnson," he said without hesitation, "my personal assistant, graduated with honors, a financial analysis prodigy." Jasmine blinked. It wasn't true. But his voice was firm, his gaze unyielding. He was shielding her. All night, Jasmine followed him from conversations to handshakes to toasts. Yet every time he turned to her, something softened in his eyes, as if she were his anchor in a sea of pretense. When the orchestra began a soft waltz, he leaned close to her ear. "Dance with me." It wasn't a request. It wasn't a command. It was a plea wrapped in elegance. Jasmine placed her hand in his. As they stepped onto the dance floor, the world around them melted away. His hands were steady, his movements instinctual, like they'd rehearsed in another life. "Everyone's watching," she whispered. "Let them," he replied, pulling her closer. "Let them see what I see." "And what do you see?" Christopher held her gaze for a long moment, then said quietly, "Light. Life." The music changed, but they kept turning, like the world had vanished and only the heartbeat between them remained. Christopher's heart pounded against his chest, syncing with hers. Suddenly, he stopped. "Let's go outside," he said. I can't keep pretending this is just a contract." The air on the hotel rooftop was cool, a relief from the heat and crowd inside the ballroom. The city sprawled beneath them, a sea of glittering lights under a star-filled sky. "When Claire died," Christopher began, "I swore I'd never let myself feel anything again. It seemed safer that way. Cleaner." Jasmine didn't say anything. She understood. This was the edge. "But then you came along." He turned to her. "With your innocence, with your truth, with those eyes that see right through everything. And now, I can't even remember why I ever thought not feeling was the better option." "I'm scared," Jasmine admitted, calling him by his name for the first time. "I'm scared of trying and failing." Christopher stepped closer, his hands gently cradling her face, full of tenderness. "I'm scared too. Scared of not trying." The world seemed to hold its breath as they leaned in, but just before their lips met, Christopher paused. "If we do this," he whispered, "it can't be because of a contract or obligation or gratitude. It has to be real." Jasmine raised her hand, her fingers softly tracing the worry line on his forehead. "From the beginning, it was real," she said. "When I saw you in that room, strong and broken." Rain began to fall. Softly, like a lullaby, but neither of them moved. The droplets mixed with the unshed tears in Christopher's eyes. "Come home," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Come home with me." On the way back from the gala, neither of them spoke, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was a quiet space, a needed pause, where two hearts were slowly drifting toward each other. When they reached the estate, Jasmine turned toward the stairs, but Christopher gently caught her hand. "You can go," he said softly, eyes calm. "No expectations, no obligations." Jasmine looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, not to leave, but to say she was choosing to stay. They stepped into the living room. The fireplace still burned low, casting flickers of amber light across her skin. No words were needed, just a glance that lingered, saying more than sentences ever could. Christopher walked closer, lifting her chin gently with reverent fingers. "If you want to stop at any time," he whispered. "I don't want to stop," she replied, voice like a breath. He removed his jacket, then slowly unbuttoned his shirt, each motion deliberate, almost hesitant, as if afraid to shatter the moment. When the fabric slid from his shoulders, Jasmine saw the long, silver scar across his chest. She reached out, fingertips trembling, tracing the line with reverent care. "My heart literally broke," he murmured. "I had surgery after my wife died." Jasmine leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on the scar, as if healing not just flesh, but soul. "Then let me help you rebuild it," she whispered. When they lay together, every touch was gentle, unhurried. It wasn't desire, it was connection, forgiveness, trust being reborn. She was no longer the girl who came because of a contract. He was no longer the man who needed distraction. That night, two broken people found one another. No conditions, no roles, just love. After that night, nothing was spoken aloud. No promises, no labels, but something had shifted, quietly, unmistakably. Christopher no longer kept his distance. Every morning he was already at the breakfast table, no longer hiding behind the newspaper. His eyes would meet hers, as if to confirm she was still there, still real. Jasmine began studying finance. It was Christopher's suggestion. "If you plan to stay by my side, you should understand the world I live in." She studied every concept, every chart, every report, not to impress him, but because for the first time she felt she could become something more than what her past had written for her. During the day, she sat beside him in his study, listening to calls, taking notes, slowly offering her own observations. One day, she pointed at a figure in a report and said, "I think something's off here." He turned, smiled softly. "You're better than half my analysts." In the evenings, They often walked in the garden, hand in hand. One night, she found a small note tucked inside her book. "You are the dawn of my life." One morning, she walked into the kitchen and found him covered in flour, struggling over a pan of pancakes. "I wanted to make something for you," he said, voice boyish and sheepish. The pancakes were burnt, but Jasmine laughed and wrapped her arms around him. "Perfect," she whispered, "like everything that comes from you." Since that night, Jasmine and Christopher's relationship had no label, yet it was present in every little detail. They didn't speak of love, didn't promise forever, but in every glance, in every shared silence, something unspoken bloomed. Christopher began to change. He smiled more, moved more gently. One afternoon, Jasmine looked up from her book in the library to find him standing quietly in the doorway, watching her, as if reminding himself she was real. "I think you should study," he told her one evening. "If you want to stay by my side, learn the world I live in." She didn't hesitate. Jasmine studied hard, taking notes, dissecting reports, learning every term, every chart. One day, she spotted a small discrepancy in a project file. Christopher looked at her as if he were seeing her brilliance for the first time. By day, they worked side by side. Lunch was shared. Evenings were for garden walks or quiet reading in the library. Sometimes, they didn't even need to speak. Just being near each other was enough. One morning, Jasmine walked into the kitchen and found him struggling with a skillet. Pancakes sizzled, uneven and slightly burned, flour dusting his hair. "I wanted to make breakfast for you," he said awkwardly. Jasmine laughed, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Her lips close to his ear, she whispered, "Burnt or not, if it's from you, I'll eat it." In those quiet, repetitive days, they loved each other in the most profound way, without noise, without spectacle, just truth. The limousine turned down a quiet, tree-lined street. Jasmine tilted her head, confused. This wasn't like any of the upscale restaurants they usually visited. When she stepped out, she read the simple wooden sign above the door. "La Vita." "This is where my parents met," Christopher explained with a soft smile. "It's also where my father proposed to my mother. An old chapter and hopefully a new beginning." Inside, the restaurant was empty. Just one table stood in the center of the cozy space, glowing with candlelight, adorned with white flowers. A violinist began to play, the same song they had danced to at the gala. Jasmine didn't need to ask. Her heart already knew. Throughout dinner, Christopher told her about his mother, a strong yet gentle woman who believed true love didn't need grandeur, only quiet consistency. After dessert, he rose from his seat, walked to her, and knelt on one knee. "Jasmine Johnson," he said, pulling a small blue velvet box from his pocket. "This ring belonged to my grandmother, then my mother. It's not big, it doesn't sparkle like a diamond, but it has carried love through 3 generations." Inside the box sat a simple gold ring with a tiny emerald. "I'm not proposing because I'm afraid of losing you. I'm proposing because every morning I wake up beside you. I feel like a better man." Jasmine nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I say yes." Weeks later, they married in the garden behind the estate. No stage, no spectacle, only white flowers, soft candlelight, and the piano playing Christopher's melody, written just for her. Before their closest friends and those who had walked the journey with them, he pulled out the old contract, the paper that had started it all, and tore it, slowly, into pieces. Today, he said, "There is nothing to sign. We simply choose each other with our hearts." They exchanged rings, vows, and a kiss that carried the weight of every quiet promise. No conditions, no agreements. Just one silent vow. I choose you. Every day. Not out of duty, but out of love. And when they kissed for the first time as husband and wife, Jasmine could hear his heartbeat echo in her own chest. It no longer sounded alone. It sounded like home.